Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, I have a couple guests with me, and they are the co-founders of the Woods Cannabis. And so with me today is Eric Velez-Chula, as well as Justin John. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, Lance.
Thanks for having us, Lance.
So walk me back to the early days of Woods Cannabis, which is a retailer of cannabis products, right? And so talk to me about those early days when you guys were sitting around thinking like, we want to start something and this is what it's going to be. How did that all come about and what have you created so far?
I think it starts even a little bit earlier than that. Like we've known each other since we were 11. So at this point, we're both 26 and 27, a little more than half our lives at this point. We grew up playing basketball together. At one point, we didn't really like each other much on the basketball court, but we got over that quick and grew into best friends. We were valedictorians together. We've always kind of done stuff together. We eventually went off to or I should say, one of those other things that we did together was we started smoking weed together at the end of high school. Soon after that, we both went off to university. Eric went to the University of Waterloo to study nanotechnology engineering. I went to Western to study at their business school there. And we both kind of saw really similar issues in terms of just cannabis consumption. So obviously you walk into a university dorm, you smell, cannabis everywhere. But what you also smell is just the disgusting scent of dirty bong water. It smells like a hamster cage, frankly. So the entrepreneurial wheels in our head started spinning where, I kind of looked at the sneaker market and the whole streetwear industry and saw that there was a place for people who, took great pride and were hobbyists and wanted to invest into their hobby by virtue of getting really good cleaning supplies. So we essentially said, let's do the same thing in cannabis. Let's create a really well-branded cleaning kit. Really leaned into Eric's engineering know-how, and we handcrafted the most over-engineered cleaning solution where we custom made a scent. We actually created little tools that we use. And we were actually going to come to market with this product. We had talked to the biggest distributors in Canada about it. Everything was looking just great and dandy. But before we knew it, we saw that we got beat to the punch, essentially. There was a brand out of the States that came out with almost exactly the same product, very similar brand ethos. So, we're
and a lot more funding.
And a lot more funding, yeah. I think they were in 300 stores. They had a flagship in Soho. And we were doing this out of Eric's parents' garage. So,
somewhat deflating, right? Yeah.
It was deflating.
And this was actually 2 days before we decided to go to market. Like we had a bit of a go-to-market marketing plan. I remember I was in the gym and I saw an article, I think it was on LinkedIn or something, about this other brand that came out, and I immediately called Justin, and it was a very deflating call early on in our entrepreneurial journey, because the branding was almost spot on to ours, but like I said, just a lot more funding behind it.
Yeah. So the writing was on the wall. That was not going to maybe be the best one to jump in on, and so then you started to explore other ideas. Like how did the Woods Cannabis come about then after that?
Yeah.
After that, we actually thought the cleaning kit didn't work. We kind of thought, let's try leapfrogging the problem. So I have a nano engineering background, and we still want to fix the problem of, dirty bongs. So we thought, okay, what if we make a nano engineered coating that we can apply to the inside of bongs, pipes, and glass apparatus, and that actually, makes it either A, impossible to get dirty, or B, very easy to clean.
Yeah.
And we went to work for about, a year and a half to 2 years on that. That consisted of, developing the chemistry with a bunch of labs, being in my garage when, frankly, cannabis was illegal. And we kind of had this, call it an artificial lung to kind of pull from these bongs. So, we wouldn't have to. We're stupid, but we're not that stupid. They kind of pull from these artificial bongs with the experimental coating, and then literally you'd see in dead winter cannabis smoke just coming out, flying through the bottom of my garage door as we were kind of like running that out of the house. And we did that for like almost a year, I'd say, like every day. Just by that time we graduated, we started our corporate jobs, and every day, like after work, whether it's 5 p.m. or 11 p.m., since we work those busy consulting hours, out just hours in the garage, pumping out cannabis smoke from our artificial lungs and our experimental bongs.
So,
yeah.
so how did that did you end up mastering the formula then to make this thing work, or?
Long story short, no. The science was difficult. We still have the patent pending. But actually with COVID, the lab we were working with shut down temporarily. That kind of made it difficult for us. What I'll also add is when you have a super experimental and highly stoner idea sounding project, not many labs will take you on. So we were very fortunate to find a lab, but yeah, with COVID, they shut down. And around the same time, we were, about, I think, a year into our corporate roles. And, we found that, it just wasn't for us. And at the same time, the cannabis retail landscape opened up. And while we were, working on those cannabis projects, like we realized that cannabis is just such a small space. We've made a lot of connections and inroads to people in the space. So we thought, we might as well take advantage of that network. And so we decided to put in our retail application, and that's kind of how the retail operation of the Woods began.
Excellent.
The other piece I'll just quickly add in is to Eric's point, cannabis retail just opened up, and we were excited to go and buy weed legally now. But a lot of the retail concepts that were just out there just weren't hitting the mark. Like, I think, the famous comparison that everyone draws is cannabis stores either feel like an Apple store or they feel like a convenience store. Mm. And for us as, young professionals who wanted to align essentially all of our shopping habits that people do with their lifestyle, there wasn't anything that kind of filled that void. So for us, we immediately thought about creating a shop that was for us, by us, essentially.
Yeah. And so everything has been driven from what you are perceiving to need, right? Now, the cannabis shop, you wanted to create a different experience. You've been open now for just under a year, right? So 11 months and counting. Mm-hmm. And so you wouldn't have been one of the first licensees, but so when you're jumping in on that, you're seeing the landscape, you're identifying where the gaps are. What other, I guess, criteria did you put into place when you were starting to think through, okay, well, what does that mean in terms of creating something that we would want to shop at?
I think a lot of it was just taking lessons from other parts of retail that really that resonated with us. Like, I think for both of us, like fashion and streetwear and luxury retail was one that immediately jumped out at us, right? People are very specific about where they shop and they take pride in it. When people, shop at Tiffany's, they take pride in walking out with their blue paper bag. And it was the same thing with sneakers, with people our age, right? People take pride in having a guy who's at Foot Locker who holds stuff aside from them, right? Because they want the latest and greatest in sneakers. And they have confidence that they can go to a certain store and get it. So what we want to do is honestly emulate that type of community building, the same culture, and that same sense of pride that people had in luxury retail and bringing to cannabis. So the biggest piece for us was creating an ambiance and a store aesthetic and a brand ethos that matched that. So we strayed away from creating, a really bright, well lit store, and we said went for some softer, richer touches. The entire, our signature colors of British Racing Green. We use a lot of gold throughout the store, and at the same time, we recognize as a new brand, it was important to also tie ourselves with brands that had stronger brand equity than we did. So we made an effort from the beginning to, obviously on the cannabis side of things, we're going to curate great cannabis, but on the lifestyle side of things, we ensured that all of our accessories were from like Versace and Supreme, Aim Leon Dore, and some of these more streetwear focused and luxury focused retail brands that people wouldn't think, would make a cannabis ashtray. And same ways for our merchandise. Like we, instead of going for like a Gildan, like a 4-ounce t-shirt that you'd get at Target, we went and used the same suppliers as Supreme and OVO. So that even though it's $110 sweater, it feels just like the sweater that you probably walked into the store with. So that way we knew that every single touch point in the consumer's journey was going to be no different than what they had experienced at any other retail store, and that they were going to be proud of shopping with us.
And one thing I'll add to that is on top of kind of, the retail concept and the brand building from that perspective. Another thing we kind of noticed early days in the existing cannabis brands and retail stores was it also wasn't in line with not just the way we shopped, but the way we shop for cannabis. I think, early on, Justin and I have been users of cannabis, but I like to think we use it in more of a deliberate way. I'm not saying there is a wrong way to use cannabis, but it certainly can be deliberate, and there's a lot of different reasons and use cases for different types of cannabis. And going into these retail concepts early on, it kind of felt like everyone was kind of selling the same thing. Everyone kind of had the same selling tactics of this is the strongest stuff. This is what you want. High THC, just buy this. This is the one. Whereas we were, from our days of smoking cannabis on the black market, we've always been interested in the particular effects each strain provides and the different flavors. Do you want something that helps you study? Do you want something that helps you get through your workout? Or do you want something that helps you unwind? Do you want to unwind and sleep? Do you want to unwind and watch a movie? Like there's a lot of different nuances that goes into picking the right strain for you. And we felt that at the same time, cannabis stores weren't really doing a great job of showing that to customers. And so, along with the shopping touch points that Justin alluded to, we also wanted to make sure that when a customer came to our store, they're met by a sommelier. One thing we're proud of is that every single employee and team member we have in the shop is a certified cannabis sommelier, just like a wine sommelier, or at least they're a sommelier in training. And that's so we can ensure that every product that comes into the store, it's tested by the sommeliers, and it's noted that this product is great for this use case or this intention. And we do that across all our products because we felt like that's how you should be shopping. You shouldn't just be shopping for necessarily value or the most potent stuff. You should shop for cannabis for what you want to do with your cannabis, because ultimately we're not just selling cannabis, we're selling a state of being, and state of beings are best aligned to a use case.
Yeah, I love it. I love the customization, the designer aspect of it, because that whole market has just evolved in terms of the types of buds that you can get, the different strains, the different effects. And so it's not like it once was on the black market, right? Like it's in terms of the kids using it in high school and so on, where it's just wherever you could get the cheapest and the most powerful probably is, and that was about it. It is such a statement as to how you want to, like you said, the intentionality of the use of it. So that's really cool that you guys identified that as just being a real gap in the marketplace. Now, in terms of positioning that, I know that it's super difficult from an advertising standpoint. There's so many different regulations or different platforms that you cannot advertise on, or it's just, they make it so restrictive that your ads just never get the airtime or the playtime that you need. How did you guys get the word out? How did you market the store obviously once people were in the store, they got it, but how did you get them into the store?
I think like tactically in the beginning, it was really just banking on friends and family and word of mouth coming through. Like I think the first couple of days felt like a high school reunion every day because just people in our personal networks who were coming by the store. But I think from there we did a couple cool things tactically that we saw high ROI on. So one thing was we have customer appreciation cards that look like and Amex, like they're gold medal cards. And I think that's one thing that a lot of businesses haven't invested on, are those physical touch points that people walk away with, where customers, they get the metal card, they get super excited. Because of that, our like loyalty opt-in rates anywhere from like 90 to 95%, right? Which is unheard of in the world of loyalty programs. But from there, they go and they show it off. We have people who, even though we can't push a lot on Instagram, a girl who has 20,000 followers, who is a card carrying member, can then take a picture and broadcast it to her people. Outside of that, I think digital, we like invested heavily into SEO. And I think that's paid dividends. And we were also strategic in our SEO. One thing that we've been lucky with is the location we're at. So we're on the border of Brampton, Mississauga. Mississauga is an opted out municipality where they just cannot sell legal cannabis. But it's also the biggest municipality in all of Canada. So we saw that from a digital perspective, nobody was really focusing on Mississauga, which was mind blowing to us, both from an SEO perspective, but also when you look at Leafly and Weed Maps, right? A lot of your weed aggregators and marketplaces, nobody really looked to market there. So for us, it was a lot of let's serve underserved markets. And I think at this point, like last we checked, 40% of our customer base is from Mississauga, the city that we're not even in. So
wow, yeah, but just being adjacent to really a hungry city, right? Yeah, that's really wise. A question for you guys, just with regard to the future competitive landscape. So oftentimes you'll have imitators, right? So some maybe with potentially deeper pockets and more stores and so on. Is there a fear that you have that some of the existing retailers will start to move up that value proposition within theirs, or start to create competitive upper scale stores like yours?
No, I don't think so. I think the reality of retail is there really is no secrets. Anyone can copy anyone. I think Justin and I, like from playing sports together our entire lives, like we're naturally very competitive people, even amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And to the extent that stores want to increase their value, it serves as a motivating factor of us to better our value proposition. And I think from a defensibility standpoint, I think one thing that we do that I think is rather difficult for other operators to emulate is just our personalities, in the sense that we overthink everything and we really give a deep attention to detail. Like any decision we make, whether it's the border or color of a small accent on an Instagram post, or the way a sentence is spelled in our 1 of 10 weekly emails that we send out to our customers, is most likely been debated between Justin and I for multiple times back and forth. And I think it's that attention to detail and that overthinking that allows us to a lot of times take two very differing perspectives and bring in the best of both worlds, which is why we're confident that, as a retail landscape in general improves its value proposition, which I think is, natural over time, that we'll still be able to innovate upon that.
And I think just to add to like two other things, I think structurally for a lot of these brands, to your point, that have deeper pockets, I think structurally they are enabled, they don't have the agility to do some of the little things we're doing. So I think the two examples that I bring up are, one, profit sharing, right? We give 10% of our profits back to our guys. Most big operators just aren't going to do that. It doesn't make sense for them with the tight, from a shareholder perspective, they just wouldn't do that, right? They have way more stringency on their bottom line than we do. The second piece is, I think what really sets us apart is just product curation. And the way they curate products is based on pay-to-play agreements that they have with large growers, right? Where they're more than happy to drive prices down or have lower volume because they know that they're going to have their pockets laced by these big corporates, by these big LPs, regardless. We don't have any data-driven agreements. We've been offered many times, but we turn them down because we want to remain agnostic and put the customer first. And what that's done as a byproduct of that is, with the evolution of the industry, with things like the flow through program coming about, where you're able to have exclusive partnerships and smaller growers are able to take pride with where they retail, we've become what we like to think the first choice for a lot of them. They're excited about selling products at our stores versus a lot of the big guys, right? That I don't want to name off, but they talk about, this is a product line that I'm going to release for stores like you guys that I pray to God and I'm going to ensure do not end up in the hands of big corporates.
Yeah. That is definitely a unique identifier or advantage that you have for sure. Those relationships, and again, just that designer perspective that you're placing on it. Those people who are passionate about what they're growing, right, and are creating really interesting product, they're naturally going to be drawn to a retailer that shares the same kind of ethos, that shares that same passion for really customizing that experience for the grower. So yeah, it's brilliant. I think you do have some vertical lock-in that occurs in that situation, and it just keeps that differentiating factor of your business very, very front and center in the minds of the consumers. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into what you mentioned there around the 10%, profit sharing that you do with your employees. So that seems somewhat novel in the retail business. I don't know if I can think of any other retailer that comes to mind anyway that has that kind of a profit sharing situation. Did you model this after another retailer, or where did this idea come from?
It wasn't even after another retailer. I think we lended lessons from our time in tech, where like ESOPs were, all the craze for any up and coming startup. But I think what we quickly identified was that going through an option pool just isn't the most intuitive and digestible for, especially like a lot of folks, frankly, that don't necessarily have a business education or are that business savvy. They want to see dollars and cents. So as soon as we do that, the value proposition was super clear. And I think in turn, we were able to, turn our guys from a cost center to really a profit center. Like, I don't think it's caused shrinkage in bottom line. I really do honestly think it's been additive to our bottom line.
Now, that's really interesting, because most people are going to be fearful of exactly that it's going to strip out, some very needed profit margin out of the business. And so how do you survive that? But you're saying that actually you're making more because of that, which is really, really quite incredible. And so why do you think that is? I guess, what is it, just that they have more buy-in to the company? They're more passionate about where they're working, and they care just a little bit more. And so that has them either selling better, looking after the customers better. Where are the advantages? What comes from this profit sharing?
I think it's exactly what you pointed out, Lance. It's that ownership mentality that they now get, and especially in retail, where you see sales and sales opportunities coming every day. It kind of activates sense that if the more sales I bring in, the more I take home, and we really believe that's how it should be. So in terms of specific things we've seen, in terms of how that profit sharing is manifested, we get guys coming in on days they're off just to help out. We get guys helping out in functions like our social media and our event hosting that really isn't part of their day-to-day responsibility. Like we said earlier, we get a lot of free influencer marketing from our guys, and we're able to attract top talent. Some of our part-timers, although they're part-timers because they don't work as many hours, but they were managers and key holders at all the other locations. So I really do believe, we have an all-star roster of team members, and it really brings the best out of them.
Yeah, just to add on to Eric's last point there about how it brings out the best of them. I think at the heart of that is this culture of transparency too, that automatically comes from profit sharing, right? We open up our books, essentially. We say, here's what last month looked like. Here's what the last 3 months looked like. Here's what this quarter looked like. easier now because we don't pay ourselves. So it's really easy to show what our books looks like when we're not taking a big chunk out of it.
Yeah.
But I think that permeates through how they interact with each other on a day to day, right? There isn't a weird dynamic between boss or employee or manager and team member. Everyone knows that we're on the same mission here. We've seen what the numbers look like. We've seen the results that we can drive. Let's just be transparent and talk to each other openly. So like problems get squashed really quick. We're like a family when it comes to things like that. And I think it starts from the top up. I think like the transparency that we've created has made it easier for everyone to be transparent.
And one
Yeah.
thing I'll add to that is that, the conversations we have on a day-to-day with our team members just become that much more valuable and constructive, as opposed to, normal conversations I think you'll see in retail settings between managers and their team of, discussing lates and potential theft and ways to improve. We're constantly talking about, what's next for the business. How can we improve the business over the next year? How can we improve the business over 2 years? And we're getting direct and genuine insights from the guys on the ground that are truly the face of the brand. And I think, you wouldn't be able to cultivate that much positive and constructive conversation without that ownership mentality being permeated throughout the entire employee base.
Yeah, it really changes the conversations that are being had. And that's something I love that you touched on that, Eric, because I don't think that's something that is intuitively, that people just naturally intuitively understand from what that change and I was going to say small change, but I mean that's a big change in terms of the way that you're compensating your employees. But that one single thing shifts the whole employee management dynamic, the conversations, everything. So yeah, again, just a really brilliant approach to it. And I can see why that is something that is really generating some success for you. It's really interesting because I've had some other conversations with other entrepreneurs about profit sharing or about shareholder, like bringing them in as letting them buy into the company and so on, and just the dynamics of it. Now, some of those other models, like you said, Justin, are there's a complexity to them. It's just not quite as easy, and so to administer or easy to really have them understand it, and in some cases they have to do cash outlays in order to buy in and so on, and so it just becomes a lot more convoluted and complicated, where you're getting the same effect, but just with a much simpler, very transparent mechanism. So that's really cool. Here's a question for you guys. So thinking back, it's been almost a year now. If you were to go back a year and say somebody gave you $1 million, you guys ended up with $1 million to invest into the business, what would you have done differently with that $1 million, with that advantage then versus what you actually did do? So what decisions would you have made differently, if any?
It's a fun question.
So to make sure I have the question correct, is it assuming we have $1 million we didn't have a year ago? We had an additional $1 million?
Yeah.
My answer would be to get more leases. I think we should.
My answer would be get a lease with a drive-through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like the biggest roadblock we're facing now is access to capital. The $1 million saves that, but the biggest piece is just access to real estate. I think a year ago things were a little easier. We had definitely had some opportunities that we don't have now. I would throw money at real estate for sure.
Yeah. Real estate for you guys. I mean, that's all what it's about, right? Location. I remember one of my first classes in business school. The prof, that's what he said. What's the most important thing in business? And everybody's spouting off all these other things, and human capital is a huge aspect of it. But his statement was location. If you're in retail, that's the only thing that matters. Obviously, not the only thing, but a hugely important one. And so you guys kind of nailed it on your location. Like you said, the data is showing that the location was actually a really good one. I love the idea of just the drive-through. So you're just talking about throughput, just trying to get that the velocity a little bit higher. Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time today to chat with us about your business, share some of your experiences, some of these novel, brilliant ideas that you guys have, and the way that you've looked at it, just so completely different. And this is one of the things that I love about doing this show, is that I get to talk to entrepreneurs who have just a totally different perspective on things, or a different take on it. And they're finding just incredible success with that. The other thing that I really want to applaud you on as well is just the confidence that you have in the model, and how it's like, you know what, I don't care. Those guys can come at me if they want to. We've got this nailed down, right? We know what we're doing here, and it's going to be damn hard for them to compete. And so having that position within the marketplace is just such an advantageous thing to have as you're going forward and trying to expand and attract more investment and everything else, so that you can really grow the business. So yeah, I think you have some great things ahead of you. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
No, appreciate that, Lance, and kudos to you for, putting this great concept podcast together. Like, I think honestly, a year or two ago, if we're able to put together perspectives of aspiring entrepreneurs, I think we'd also be able to have more valuable insights. So I think this is a great initiative you're putting together.
That's it. It's just all about sharing ideas and sharing experiences, and hopefully somebody can take a little piece of that and embed it into their business, and also see some success, or avoid some of the mistakes that we all commonly make. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's about sharing. That's all it is. So thank you guys very much for that. And for those of you who are listening, if you enjoyed this episode and want to check out our other episodes, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find all of our archives and future episodes. And if you prefer to listen to this, if you're watching it right now, head over to your favorite podcasting platform and just search for Amplify Your Business. We're in all the majors now, so you can access the information either via the website, via our YouTube channel, via social media, or via the podcasting platform. So until next time, I guess, everybody have a prosperous day, and thank you once again, you guys, for joining us on the show today.